Friday, October 25th, 2024, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. We've got Clive back. Uh, we haven't been on for a while on a Friday because I went to Italy and then Clive went away as well. So, Clive, how are you doing?
Good morning, Mario. Well, I'm back here with my financial advisor, who you can see sitting alongside me. He keeps an eye on me, make sure I don't say anything I shouldn't.
Okay, so today we're gonna cover a few topics. One of them is the Bank for International Settlements and CBDC, and I think it's a really important topic. And we're also going to look at platinum. Clive has written something on platinum. It's not precious metals that I follow very closely. I'm more into gold and silver, but I think a lot of you have asked in the past what I think about platinum, so I think that would be good. And we're also going to look at the UK budget. I went through a little game yesterday in the FT, which I subscribe to. I know the FT is, I don't agree with it 100%, but you need to subscribe sometimes to such publications. And I think you won't be surprised. I was kind of like the Chancellor of the Exchequer for one day. And the FT seemed to be a bit distressed with the acts that I took. And what else, Clive, is going on? Maybe we can cover the BRICS. And you said you found a glitch in their promotional uh, symbolic banknote that Putin was waving around. We can look at that. And maybe we could look at gold and silver as well, Clive. And I don't know if you saw Newmont yesterday dropped quite a lot because
I did.
they had their results the previous day. They were good results, but I think the market didn't like the fact that the cost of mining went up a bit, and I think it just goes to show how leveraged these markets are. But I still think it's in the long run, it's a good place to be, Newmont. So
Yeah.
maybe you can give your opinion on that.
Well, if you want to look at leverage, look at Tesla, which went up 22% yesterday.
Wow, yeah, I hadn't seen that. But anyway, anything else you want to talk about, Clive, aside from platinum?
Well, I think the comment on interest rates is that short-term interest rates are going down, long-term interest rates are still going up.
Yeah,
It tells us that inflation is on its way next year.
that's right. So let's start with the Tower of Basel. And what's the Tower of Basel? Well, it's a book I've recommended many times by a guy called Adam Liebort, and it's the shadowy history of the secret bank that runs the world, the Bank for International Settlements. A lot of people say the Bank of International Settlements. I think we need to get it right. It's for international settlements. It was created by a treaty in 1930 by the major central banks of the world and the major Wall Street banks. They own the B.I.S. And at the time, the central banks of the world were private. So I would say that indirectly, the B.I.S. is owned by very wealthy families that we don't know who they are, but they're related to the national central banks. And Clive, in their statute, the I think it was the capital that they put into the bank was 200 million francs in and they measured it in gold grams. So it just goes to show you what they think money is. But suffice it to say, uh, this bank is basically like the Vatican or Washington, D.C. It's a supranational bank in Switzerland. So of course, it has to obey the criminal law in Switzerland, but inside the BIS, they have diplomatic immunity. So it's a very powerful bank. They come across as just a regulator. And I want to kind of expose them a little bit. And some people might think, well, this was 80 years ago. Maybe they have changed, but right, Clive? But uh, there's a story back in 1938 when Germany invaded Czechoslovakia. Back then it was called Czechoslovakia. the first thing the Germans did, when you read about what they did during World War II, they went to the central bank. And why did they do that? Well, to get all the gold. So they did that in Czechoslovakia. And then, believe it or not, the guy from the Reichsbank during in 1938 and also during the war, he sat with the other guys from the warring countries at the BIS. So they were doing business during World War II with the enemy. But anyway, in 1938, Czechoslovakia also had some gold at the BIS account at the Bank of England. And the Germans contacted Norman Montague, the governor of the Bank of England, and he said, "Fine, you can have the Czechoslovak gold as well. We're going to transfer it from them to the Reichsbank account at the Bank of England, from the BIS account at the Bank of England." So that was a big scandal. Even someone in Parliament made a speech in 1939, but it went through anyway. And then at the end of the war, towards the end of the war, when the IMF, World Bank, and the Bank for Internet, not the and the Bretton Woods Agreement war was being, how can I say, agreed upon. Uh, yeah, there was opposition to the BIS, and I'm gonna go in the part here, Clive, where it talks about this. It's on page 121. It says, but if there was a consensus on the basics, there was none on the future of the BIS. Within the IMF, at the center of the new international financial system, why was the BIS still needed? Henry Morgenthau, he was the U.S. Treasury Secretary, and Harry White, he was the guy negotiating at Bretton Woods, wanted the bank to be abolished. On July 10th, 1944, they seemed about to get their wish. Wilhelm K. Howe of the Norwegian delegation introduced a motion to liquidate the BIS. Um, It says, be it resolved that the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference recommends the liquidation of the Bank for International Settlements at Basel. It suggested that the liquidation shall begin at the earliest possible date and that the governments of the United Nations, now at war with Germany, appoint a commission of investigation in order to examine the management of the transactions of the bank during the present war.
Yeah,
No.
we're 80 years later, and it's still here, Mario.
Yeah, and they're pushing CBDC on us. But let me finish here, and then you'll see who stopped the BIS from being abolished. No delegation spoke publicly in defense of the BIS, but behind the scenes, its defenders, sections of the State Department, Wall Street, the Bank of England, the British Treasury, and Foreign Office went into action. So basically, um, it was John Maynard Keynes he was the representative at Bretton Woods, and he said that the UK would leave the Bretton Woods Agreement and the conference if they abolished the BIS. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I don't think leopards changed their spots. They helped Germany plunder a lot of European countries, and I think with the CBDC, they're going to be it's going to be central banks that have the CBDC, but I think the back door will go to the BIS because, Clive, you probably know the BIS is the bank for the central bankers, and I think it's really dangerous. And I just want to play here, Clive, uh, a share here. This is the managing director of the B.I.S. I don't really think he's a very powerful guy. He's more like the guy who runs things for the big central banks that are involved. And this is what he said about the CBDC.
Analysis on CBDC in particular
Let's start again.
our analysis on CBDC in particular for the use of general to the general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is. On our analysis.
So there you go, Clive. I think that's pretty dangerous. They'll have total control.
I heard the words loud and control. We will have control. We'll be able to determine what you use your money for, and we'll have technology to enforce that. It's very worrying, Mario. Maybe not so much for me, because I don't think they'll impose these sorts of controls on day one. I think on day one, it's going to be a little bit like your credit card that you've got in your pocket today. But I think over time, they will be saying, we need to know what you're doing for anti-money laundering reasons. We need to make sure you're paying all your taxes. So we need to monitor everything. And just to make sure we're monitoring everything, all your transactions must be done via a CBDC wallet. And if we think you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, for example, if we think you're a terrorist or a drug dealer, we can put a stop to it through enforcement. But of course, that is a slippery slope, because they can then move to the next phase and say, we also are handing out benefits to people who haven't got enough money. And we've noticed that some of those people are buying alcohol and cigarettes and gambling with the money, and we don't agree with that. So we're going to restrict that. And by the way, we've noticed that some people are eating too much meat, so we're going to stop them having more than a certain amount of meat, and so on and so forth. So I think it's a bigger worry for my children and my grandchildren, because these types of rules are going to come in little by little, very slowly and gradually. Each one will be a small slice of a rule, and you'll say, well, it's not much different from the week before. But slowly but surely, we'll enter into a dystopian society where people are controlled through their wallet, just as is already happening in China now through the social score system. And people's wallets are, in fact, controlled if they don't follow the official rules. I mean, you can't say something too negative about the Communist Party in China, because you will find that you have some restrictions put on you via your wallet.
Yeah, and here in the UK, for example, I have a NatWest account, and it's interesting because I opened that account in the late 80s when I wasn't living here. I came to do an internship, and the guy who ran the company who I did the internship at decided to pay me. First, I wasn't getting paid, and he said, "So open an account at NatWest, St. Paul's." And it was so easy opening an account back then. So I went there, opened the account. So I still have that account, but I saw that uh, earlier this year, or it could have been last year, they have a new function in the app, in the NatWest app, that allows you, and it's voluntary. They always start, you can opt in if you want, and it allows you to see how you're doing in terms of your carbon footprint. If you're eating too much red meat, if you're driving too much. And I haven't volunteered to use that function. I wonder how many people have, and that's how they get you, Clive. There are some countries, though, and actually in the U.S., Clive, I saw that Florida, they've banned CBDCs. The state of Florida says I'll share it here with you and the viewers. Where is it?
I've had quite a few people from the United States write to me and say that the CBDC will never be allowed to get in America, and any attempt to do so, they will uh, carry out certain illegal. They don't use the word
Yeah,
illegal actions, but we know what they're talking about
yeah.
with the guns in
So-
America. Basically, people are saying they're going to resist it.
Yeah, it says the U.S., Florida being first state to pass such a law citing privacy concerns. So they've introduced legislation to ban state payments using CBDCs. And Clive, I recently interviewed a guy from the U.S. who's the executive director of the Sound Money Defense League.
Mhm.
And they're doing a lot of work with the states. They're going from the bottom up. And a lot of states in the US are introducing legislation to abolish sales tax, capital gains tax on gold and silver. And I think this is a really good thing. And they're also going into the CBDC banning route. And this video, I'm going to publish it tomorrow, actually, this interview. It's with the executive director of the Sound Money Defense League. And I think in Switzerland as well, Clive, wasn't there a referendum or some law that passed that said that you can have CBDC, but cash has to run parallel with it?
We've gathered together enough votes to require the government to keep cash going. It's not a referendum at this point. We gathered enough votes for the referendum, which I think will come next year. These things do take a time after you've got the votes. So first of all, they do a petition in the street, and you've got to get 100,000 signatures, and then you could go to the referendum. So that's the next step. The referendum will come, and the referendum, we don't know what the question will be exactly, but it's likely to say that notwithstanding the introduction of CBDC, the government is required to continue to make cash available and allow it to be used in society so that you have an alternative. You don't have, if you want privacy, you don't have to use the CBDC. We'll see where that goes, but I, of course, will be voting that we keep the cash in the system.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. The other thing that people don't realize, even the word cash is being corrupted because back in, well, over 100 years or 150 years, cash was really the name for gold and silver coins. And like the banknotes was not cash, it was like a promissory note. So if you wanted to cash your banknote, that meant you went to the bank and got your sovereign for £1, your gold coin. So that is even being corrupted, but it's still better than digital CBDC. And there are people, Clive, like Catherine Austin Fitz. I was listening to her yesterday. Uh, she did an interview with Greg Hunter, and she said that the goal of the central bankers and the B.I.S. is to control not just the money, but the fiscal part of things, to control everything. And she thinks that's why they're allowing Congress and here in the UK, the Treasury and Parliament to spend so much and make it so that the whole system collapses so they can come in and say, we're going to bring in the CBDC and control everything. So yeah, and the other thing about cash, Clyde, is that we've seen in the US with these recent hurricanes and natural disasters that you don't have access to electronics when that happens, and people who have cash can do a lot of things. So it does come in handy. Before we move on to platinum, just want to recommend this book, The Tower of Basel. You really need to read this book if you want to understand how the system works, the central banking system. And Clive, I just saw here uh, at the front. This is a quote from Gates Magara, first president of the Bank for International Settlements. And guess who he was the grandfather of? Uh, he was the
Not
grandfather.
not 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 Bill Gates.
No, he was the grandfather of one of the CIA directors, Helms. So that's quite interesting. Because I think Alan Dulles was very close to the B.I.S. as well. He was a CIA director. But he said the bank is completely removed from any governmental or political control. So there you go. That's the B.I.S. And let's change subjects and move on to platinum. One thing I know about platinum, Clive, if I'm not mistaken, yes, it is an element in the periodic table, but it was only discovered like in the early 1800s, and the name means little silver, doesn't it? In Spanish,
Yeah,
platinum,
platina,
platina, yeah. So,
little silver.
so what are you seeing in platinum that is interesting?
Well, could I bring up a little chart to first
Yeah,
of all show you where I
sure.
see that?
Yeah.
Let's do it like that. That's uh, share. Right. There we go. I'll just make that. I'll just make that bigger. Um, this is a logarithmic scale, and it's showing three charts. It's the price of gold, the price of silver, and the price of platinum. The orange line, or if you like, gold color line, is gold, and this is going back to 1986. It's the furthest back I could go in this respect. So the orange line is the gold price. The gray line or silver line is the silver price on a logarithmic scale, and the green line is the platinum price. Now, throughout most of history, platinum was a much rarer, and it still is. It's a much more pricey metal than gold, but that's changed. I remember when I was a boy, my father used to show off his platinum wedding ring sometimes to people, and he was always happy to point out that it's platinum because platinum was worth a lot more than gold. And of course, that's why today we have platinum credit cards, which are more important than gold credit cards, because going back in time, platinum was always a much rarer and more beautiful metal than gold, apparently. So, the ratio of platinum to gold is something like 20-1. That means for every ounce of gold in the earth, for every 20 ounces of gold in the Earth's crust, we only have 1 ounce of platinum. And although they didn't discover it till a couple of hundred years ago as an element, there were, I think they did find some ancient, I think it was an Egyptian tomb or something like that, where they'd segregated out the platinum from the other metals and made a tube out of it. So it's a metal which has been effectively in existence for over 1,000 years, I believe, or 2,000 years now. But really, as you say, it's a fairly recent metal, and where its modern uses comes in is mainly in the automotive industry. Along with palladium, it's used in catalytic converters. So platinum and palladium are, in a certain sense, interchangeable. Not interchangeable in the same device. The technologies are slightly different. So you can't take a car which is using a catalytic converter running with platinum and put a palladium one in, or vice versa. It doesn't work like that. If you design a car to run on a platinum catalytic converter, you have to stick with that. So in a way, the two kind of trade off each other in price terms anyway. But I'm really looking at platinum because if you look, for those who think they've missed the bull market in silver and gold, and I don't think you've missed it. I think we're still at the beginning. But if you've have a problem buying something where it's a lot higher than it was a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, then there's still platinum out there, which you can see on the green line on my chart is it's barely been changing very much. It's been up and down a bit, but it's well below its peak, which was well over $2,000. Currently, it's about $1,000, give or take. So you've gone from a situation back in 1988 when platinum was double the price of gold, because platinum was over $2,000 then, gold was under $1,000 then. That's 1988.
No,
We're now
wasn't that? Sorry, Clive. 2008. Yeah,
Yeah, I beg your
2008.
2008. Yeah, you're right. I'm looking at the chart here. 2008. So 2008, platinum was double the price of gold. Now platinum is half the price of gold. Why is that? Well, I think it's really the central banks are buying gold because they think the end of the fiat system is not far away. They're not sure if they're going to get repaid in anything valuable, so they're reducing their exposure to treasuries and buying gold. That's pushing up the price of gold, but obviously we do have these other precious metals of silver, platinum and palladium. And just pointing out that if you want to play the precious metals game and you think you missed the early rises, it's still very, very early as far as platinum is concerned. As far as supply and demand is concerned, the demand for platinum these days is growing. It's about 3% a year growth, and the demand exceeds the supply, the mine supply. So the forecast for the current year from the World Platinum Investment Council, the quarterly forecast, is that we will have mine supply of 5,500 kilo ounces. That's 5.5 million ounces. And the consumption will be 8.1 kilo ounces or 8.1 million ounces. In other words, the consumption of platinum will be massively in excess of the supply. So
Yeah,
I think that's all there is to say on platinum. I think we should perhaps
yeah.
talk about you being Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mario. You did this competition with the was it a competition or
FT.
a
It's a
game with the
game.
FT?
Yeah, just want to show the platinum chart on its own, just for the viewers here, Clive. So it's actually gold is worth more than two times. It's 2.7 times because we're at 1,006 in platinum. So yeah, I think it's a good opportunity still, even though I'm not really, I don't have any platinum. And how could you play platinum, Clive? I guess you can buy platinum coins and
Yeah,
bars, or
yeah,
you can buy a platinum mining company producer as well, which is a bit different.
yeah. Yeah, well, many of the best known coins, the ones which are available in silver and gold, are also available in platinum. So you can go to any coin dealer or gold and silver dealer, and they'll almost certainly have platinum coins. I know they've been proposed to me.
Yeah.
Um, I I haven't got around to buying any of those coins yet, but I think it might not be a bad idea. They also have bars of various sizes at the dealers. Alternatively, you've got a number of ETFs. When I had a quick look, I found three of them very quickly and easily. I won't say the names, but if you Google it, you'll find physical platinum ETFs, which actually have the platinum stored in a safe facility. And last but not least, but it's a lot more risky, you've got the platinum producers, but most of the platinum produced in the world comes from South Africa or Russia. That's
Yeah.
where it
Well,
comes from.
yeah.
And so if you're prepared to take South African risk, that's political risk, and there's a lot of industrial disputes in the mines these days in South Africa. So if you're prepared to take that sort of risk, well, there's a bunch of shares in South Africa, quoted shares, some of which trade as ADRs in America or the UK. There'd be GDRs in the UK. So you could buy one of the shares, one of the South African companies which mine platinum. Of course, they're quite cheap because of those risks, but you get a leveraged effect if the platinum price goes up.
So I can see that Miles Franklin, who I'm affiliated with, they've got platinum. So yeah, you can get in touch with them via email and mention that I sent you there if you're interested in platinum. There's a link below in the description as well, if you want to find out exactly how to get in touch with them. I'm not sure. Let's see, Gold Investments here in the UK, whether they do platinum. Um, I'm not sure. You might have to ask Oliver or Simon Temple if they can provide platinum. So anyway, Clive, back to the
FT.
yeah UK budget. I mean, this is a huge. It's been the last 2 months. There's been so much speculation about how much tax the chancellor is going to take. She's been scaring people, saying that there's a black hole of 20 billion pounds. Even though 20 billion pounds is like it's not a huge amount. It's like the GDP of the UK is about 2.7 trillion pounds. but I think she's done that as an excuse to come after people with the wealth. And I think the government already has given in to a lot of the unions. They've given them high pay rises. I see that they're like, I think they're going to punish the private sector, and because they're very socialist and they think that the government knows best and that the public sector is like a sacrosanct. So the FT, I saw yesterday, they had this little game that I could play, and I would go and draw up my own budget. And one thing I have to say, in many of the components that I went in to change the numbers, you couldn't go into negative. So they do have a bias that you have to keep spending. So I tried my best. So let's see what the FT found. But that's my budget. And if you subscribe to the FT, you can play this game as well. It says, did you stick to your fiscal rules? Yes, you have met your fiscal rules, but markets question whether your budget will be sustainable given the deep spending cuts you've introduced. The government is considering a change to its debt target to create more scope for borrowing to invest. Using this alternative gauge, you would also meet your fiscal rules. Well, actually, yes, she's just fudged the definition of the debt, Clive.
Yeah,
Reeves, did you see that?
I did. I mean, I think we're going to get the details on October the 30th.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know, other than saying that she's going to change the definition of debt. And I suppose what that means is they're going to pretend that the debt is less than it really is. And I don't know how
Yeah.
she's going to do that. Have you
Well,
any ideas, Mario?
yeah, basically, she's going to say that money that they borrow to invest in the long-term infrastructure is going to be seen as an asset and not a liability because it will supposedly be well invested. But have you seen governments investing things well? I haven't. But so what it means is that it will give her the leeway to borrow more. I think about 50 billion. And I think we're already seeing the gilt yields starting to rise, Clive. So I think she should keep an eye on gilt yields. And I'm not sure the bond vigilantes are going to be very impressed. But like you said, we have to wait until the 30th. But it says here that the markets question your budget. But the thing is, having deep cuts, as you can see here, is going to create, this is my budget here, the red line, is going to create a surplus for the government, which basically means they'll be able to, they're basically they can be pay off the debt, which is mine here, this line here. And what that means, in my opinion, is that tax revenue as a percentage of GDP is going to go down to like by 2%. And I think that's a good thing because it means the private sector and individuals are going to have more money in their pocket. And what can you do with more money in your pocket, Clive? Can you tell the viewers?
Oh, well, if it was me, I'd be popping down to the coin shop. But I'm sure plenty of people would take out another subscription to Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever they like. But for me,
It would
it'd be another coin.
it would help the economy, but not just in a consumption way, Clive, but you'd be able to save more, you'd be able to invest more. And isn't it in private investment that creates wealth and not public investment? Would you say
Absolutely.
that?
No. And you know, I was just listening to you earlier about how Rachel Reeves is she's going to start calling the government's liabilities when they made it for investment. They're going to start calling them assets
Yeah.
to reduce the debt. Now, why don't they just adopt the same principle for company accounting? Let's take all the
Yeah.
large companies in the world and they can write off their liabilities and call them assets instead. Wouldn't that be good for the stock market?
Yeah, that's
Or
right.
maybe maybe it'd be criminal. Maybe they'd have to go to jail. No, that
Oh,
wouldn't work.
doesn't the Fed also do the same thing?
Yeah, the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve has been making significant losses. So on the profit and loss account, they should be putting those losses through the P&L, but in fact, they're recording those losses as on the balance sheet as an asset because they say, since we don't have to pay any profits to the government, we're going to call those profits, i.e., losses, that we don't have to pay, we're going to call them an asset. So the Federal Reserve's balance sheet includes an asset which comprises, to all intents and purposes, the losses they've made over the last 2 years, which they won't have to pay to the government. So the way they're thinking is, if we ever make a profit again, we won't have to give the government anything. So that's really an asset, a bit like a tax credit, if you like. But of course,
Yeah.
it's in the wrong place on the balance sheet.
So here's my public services and welfare. It says relative to inherited plans, you've lowered day-to-day spending by 155 billion pounds a year by 2029-30. These are brutal cuts. They will take a huge toll on public services. Uh,
Mario, you must have been thinking about installing the CBDC and stopping all these poor people from gambling and drinking and smoking, eh?
No, I wouldn't go for CBDC. What I actually would go for, I would tell the Bank of England to start issuing £100 and £200 notes. You know why, Clive? Because 25 years ago, the pound was the pound has gone down 100 times versus gold in the last 25 years because the ounce of gold used to be around 200 or 10 times, sorry, used to be around 200 and now it's 2000. So why should we just have a 50-pound banknote? So no, I want to see more banknotes out there. And I think people would not be trying to avoid taxes if you cut their taxes. So what does it say about investment? Well, investment for the FT and the government is public spending, right? Says relative to inherited plans, you've lowered the investment by 40 billion a year, taking public investment to 0.5% of GDP. Uh, that's one of the components I wanted to put as negative, but it only let me go to 0.5% because I don't believe governments invest anyway. And it says many economists say the UK was too harsh on public investment after the last financial crisis. Now they're warning that you've made the same mistake. No, I think the mistake was made during the financial crisis. Actually, we didn't punish the banks. We didn't let them fail. So that's the way I see it. I guess how long do you think I'd last as Chancellor? Clive, would I last longer than Kwasi Kwarteng?
I think you would, Mario. I think there's people are fed up with inflation in the UK, and anyone who's doing something to bring it down will get my thumbs up.
All right. And so this is what Prime Minister Hope Hall says. Public services are creaking and you've imposed an even steeper squeeze on government departments. That's right.
Yeah, get rid of them.
Yeah, voters want to see improvements. This budget guarantees they won't. Frustrated with the result, play again. I'm not going to play again. No, I think voters are frustrated about the government taxing them too much and inflation taking away their purchasing power. So I think that's where they're wrong. Anyway, that's my contrarian budget. So yeah, maybe we could talk a little bit about uh, what you think about Newmont and what happened, what can happen, you know, in in a precious metal, because I think we are in a boom market for precious metals, and I think the miners are going to catch up. But people have to be prepared for this kind of volatility, I would say.
When companies bring out their results, there's always a knee-jerk reaction on the results, either up or down. I don't think anyone should get disillusioned by these knee-jerk reactions because most of the time you see things plodding along a little bit up, a little bit down, and then you have the results, and the price is going to move. I didn't look at the Newmont results. I saw the price change, and I thought, oh my God, that's pretty bad because it brought down also the price of the GDX, the gold miners ETF, because Newmont will be a certain proportion of that. Um, and I so all I can say is what's going on in the gold sector is the price of gold is going up and the cost of mining is going up, but the cost of mining is not rising as fast as the price of gold. So the profits of the mining companies should be expanding. And I haven't looked at the results of Newmont. I don't know if you did, but I imagine that their profits were higher this quarter than they were a
Yeah.
year ago.
Yeah, someone tweeted out Katusa Research, Marion Katusa. He's quite a well-known like analyst in the commodity sector, or raw materials. And he said Newmont's profits soar. The world's largest gold company saw net income rocket to $922 million in Q3 from last year's 158 million, driven by soaring gold prices and increased sales volumes totaling 4.61 billion, but the stock is down 14%.
So that's amazing. You
And
know,
he says,
the
"Are you
profit.
not entertained?" I think it's a buy the dip. Uh,
Yeah, that's
I'm
amazing. When you get profits going up 6 times what they were a year ago, and the share price falls, it just shows the lack of enthusiasm at the moment for gold mining stocks. This is just not Nvidia at all. You know, if Nvidia had done that, everyone would be cheering, and the price would probably double.
Yeah. The only reason, Clive, I didn't haven't bought more of the Newmont stock is that I've reached my tax-free limit here in the UK. So if I wanted to buy more, I'd have to do it through a normal account, and I'd be liable to capital gains tax, which is the threshold is really low. It's only 3,000 pounds, and I don't want to invest in a company and then pay the government tax for my profits. So unfortunately, I'll have to wait till next April, and we don't know, Clive, if we need to see the budget on the 30th. And when is the 30th? Today's the 25th, so it's in 5 days' time, sometime next week. They might even lower the amount that you can put for tax-free investment, which is called an ISA. Uh, right now, it's 20,000 a year, uh, every tax year. So I don't even know how much I'll be able to put from next April. I bet you they'll lower it to something like 10 or 5,000.
Well, there's a lot of nasty proposals, including charging national insurance contributions on pension payments, which will
Yeah,
hurt old age pensioners.
I saw that, and then the speculation is that they're going to do that for private pensions, people in the private sector, but for public people who work in the public sector, they won't impose that national insurance. So it's really unfair, I would say. And Clive, did you know that anyone that works in the public sector doesn't pay tax?
No, I didn't know that. That sounds very generous.
Well, the fact they do actually, but if you look at who pays the public sector, it's the private sector through taxation, right? So logically, why should people who work in the public sector pay tax, right? Because they're being paid already by taxes, but they have to charge them tax to make it look like it it's fair. Don't you think though? So it's like a double taxation. You're taxing the tax. It's a really good well, it's not a good system. It is a good system for the government. So
Well,
anyway,
I'm all in favor of them continuing to pay tax. I wouldn't make it tax free if you work for the government.
oh, all I'm
They don't
saying,
they don't
yeah.
produce anything valuable mostly.
No, I know, but what I'm saying, it just gives more job, I guess, to the HMRC, I guess. It keeps them busy. Anyway, Clive.
Shall we look at these banknotes?
Oh
That
yeah, I don't know if you guys saw.
uh,
There was a
so
photo op, wasn't it? You tell the viewers.
Yeah, so there was an article in the FT about Mr. Putin giving a speech about the need for a new BRICS currency to um, re basically to replace the dollar. Basically, he was basically saying the Americans have weaponized the dollar. We have to do something about it. So what I thought I would do is if I can
But
share a
Clive,
screen here.
I'm not sure he said they're going after for currency right away. I think they're going for an alternative payment system. But
That's right.
yeah, but there's a little bit of a PR show. Someone made a bank,
So
didn't they?
here's the line from the FT. A proposal for a BRICS currency was introduced at last year's summit in South Africa, and prototype banknotes were unveiled for the first time on Russian TV on Wednesday, although it was unclear how they would be used.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd hunt down these so-called prototypes, and here's the front page, the front of the one, and here's the back of one. Um, so Mario, you can see on the front side here we've got the Christ Brazil, Christ the Redeemer. In Russia, what's that? That's the
Kremlin.
it's the church, isn't it? I forgot what it's called. St.
Yeah, but
Bartholomew's Church.
isn't that where the Kremlin is, though, basically?
Yeah, yes, it is. It's the Red Square anyway.
Yeah.
Then in India, you've
Taj
got the
Mahal.
Taj Mahal. In China, they've got a snake, which is obviously next year is the year of the snake,
Or
2025.
isn't it like the
Uh,
dragon? Or
and I think that looks like a dragon, doesn't it? I think it's the year of
yeah.
snake. Oh, maybe, yeah,
Oh,
maybe it's the dragon this year. That's probably what it is. Yes.
yeah. The Chinese
And
dragon.
then, and I'm not, and South Africa, I'm not sure what that would be. Maybe it's one of the statues on the Union Building or something
Yeah.
but I don't know. But there's something odd about the banknote. Can you have a look and tell me what you see, Mario? You see
Well,
anything odd on that?
well, you said something about the Chinese.
Yeah, it's clue. The clue is there's something to do with the Chinese. If you look around in the inner circle,
Yeah.
we have the four of the BRICS countries,
Oh, yeah. And there's nothing on
and
the
in
Chinese.
the outer circle, you have the Chinese. That says in China that says Zhongguo, which is China or country China.
Yeah.
Um, why have they put China
Well,
in the
maybe
outer circle?
because that dragon is would cover it. Maybe.
Yes, that could be it. Anyway, of course, this is a bit of a gimmick and it's
Yeah.
a joke, but I thought it was quite interesting to have a look at the mock-up that someone has put together. And of course, there's a if you look at the look around on the internet, you'll find some pictures of President Putin holding the banknote in
Oh,
his
yeah.
hand as well.
Someone handed it to him, didn't they? I think I have it here. Let's see. Uh, at the BRICS summit, which ended. Yes. Oh, here we go. I'm gonna.
You found it?
Yeah. Let me share it. So here it is. Yeah, I think it's more just symbolic, and I think the people who don't, you know, in the West, I think they're trying to play down this BRICS alternative monetary architecture or payment system. So they're going to come and say, "Oh, this is ridiculous. They're never going to have a BRICS currency." And it's true. I don't think they really want a BRICS currency, but they're gonna use that as an excuse to say, "You see, I showed you." And this is just a little bit of a prank, I would say, because look at Putin's face, you know. So
Yeah.
that's the
I,
100 unit, I guess they'd call it.
I mean, I think what this shows is that these kind of things are being talked about,
Yeah,
but there's nothing concrete in terms of anything coming anytime soon.
that's right. Great, Clive. So. Yeah, we've seen gold and silver correct a little bit, but things don't go up in a straight line. And yeah, I think nothing's changed. And aside from that, we've got 11 days to the elections in the US, and that's going to be something really big.
Great.
Yeah. So, any final words, Clive, for the viewers before we wrap up?
I say keep a steady hand, stay diversified, don't put all your eggs in one basket, don't have too much exposed to cash or fiat for the long term. But if you need cash or fiat to buy a house or for your spending needs, then you have to have it. But those who have far more fiat, cash, or bonds than they actually need are probably going to find that it won't buy them nearly as much 10 years from now as it buys today.
Yeah, and you were speaking earlier before we started that yeah, the Fed is going to keep cutting rates, but the longer term yields are going up, which says the market sees inflation. I saw Paul Tudor Jones the other day. He's a famous hedge fund manager. He said that he's holding gold, Bitcoin as well, and commodities, and he said he's not touching long-term treasuries because he said something like, "Oh yeah, all roads lead to inflation," and he said when governments are up to here and that they've done it since time immemorial is inflate the debt away, make it worth less, and that's why Clive is right in my opinion. If you hold a lot of cash and government bonds over the next 5, 10 years, you're going to lose out. So,
I mean, yeah, if you think about it, inflation, real inflation, not the inflation they tell you about, real inflation, that's the expansion of government debt and so on, is probably more like 7%. You're earning, if you're lucky, 4% on your money, less tax. That makes it 2%. So you're going backwards to the tune of 5% a year. After 10 years, you've lost 50% of your buying power.
yeah, no, it's and in the last 25 years or so, gold has gone up about 9 to 10% a year in the major currencies. So I'm not saying that's going to continue, but it has a good track record. And just for the viewers to, if they are interested in getting in touch with Clive, you can do it on LinkedIn. Just connect to Clive. And as he says, though, it's only if you have questions. It's not to like just say hello and things like that. And again, all that we're talking about here is what we think. It's not financial advice, right, Clive?
Yeah, I mean, what I try to do is help people if they have a question on their finances or something. I help them see if their thought process is sound. I'm not going to tell them which stock to buy or anything
Yeah,
like that.
that's right. Great, Clive. I wish you a great weekend and all of you as well a great weekend, and I'll talk to you later.
Bye to all, and thanks for
Bye.
the thumbs up.